Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. Finally.
The Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast.
Who's come back? Give me a hell yeah.
Welcome everybody back to another episode of the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. I, as always, am your host, Andy Burrows. I'm joined by my good friend and tag team partner, Mr. Adam Cousins. Adam, how are you, brother?
I'm good now, thanks, Andy. You okay?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. And Adam, as you did so well in our last introduction, I'll let you introduce today's guest, my friend. Who have we got on?
Homework.
Who have we got joining us today, my man?
Well, we have a very special guest from America for us, Mr. Jon Alba. Welcome.
I appreciate you having me here, guys. Let's chat some wrestling.
Let's talk some wrestling, John. I'm not gonna lie, my friend. 3 hours of Raw was really, really hard for me to get through this week, John. How do you feel about this gap in between now, WrestleMania? You've got the Elimination Chamber. It's got, people seem to forget, like, WrestleMania is still like 8 weeks away. I always find, don't get me wrong, as the closer you get, it's okay. But I always struggle with this little bit in between now and WrestleMania, because I had a lot of people tweeting us on the Hitting the Turnbuckle account saying, kind of just feels like they're just filling the gaps, and Raw for 3 hours is a long time to fill. I don't know, WWE TV so far this week, I know we sit here on Wednesday recording this, so we haven't obviously seen SmackDown yet, seems to have just plodded along. I don't know what you make of it.
I think you always find this time of the year to be tricky. There can be some creative lulls, but I mean, look, right now they've got one of the hottest angles, arguably two of the hottest angles they've ever had, period. So I rest my laurels on that and understand that if the show can be built around those two angles with the bloodline between Cody and Sammy, well, then everything else that is periphery, it kind of just tags along with it. And if they can make it interesting, awesome. If not, 3 hours is a long time to watch a TV show. I don't generally watch Raw live. I usually watch it afterwards and able to kind of skip through some stuff. Sometimes I catch it live, but I do believe it's just a matter of going all in on the hot angles that you do have. And so far, I think they've done a really good job with those two major angles with Sami Zayn and Cody.
Yeah, we briefly on our last episode with Vince Russo touched on the whole Sami Zayn thing. Where are you with it? Are you in camp Sami Zayn? This is someone that could carry the WWE and potentially, could have a feud with Cody later on down the line. Because, like, we all know, we're not stupid. We're just in up wrestling. Roman Reigns is probably going to be gone until maybe SummerSlam after Mania. They could throw a curveball and he could still be around. Where are you, John, at the moment with the whole Sami Zayn carrying the WWE on his back?
I mean, I'm not sure what qualifies carrying on their back. What I do know about Sami Zayn is that he's obviously someone that forms a special connection with an audience. And I've always thought that about him. And even through the past 3 years where he had some lulls, he is somebody that has enough expertise in storytelling and eliciting emotion that when an audience forms that authentic connection with him, it creates those special moments. And we've seen some very special moments so far from Sami Zayn. So whatever they end up paying off with it, however that is paid off, whether he's the guy or not, I'm not sure. But he's clearly somebody that can be a player in WWE. So you shouldn't shy away from that, whatever way you choose to lean into that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Adam, thoughts on Raw this week, my friend? Like John said, I'm not going to lie. I do the same as John. I record it and then I might skip through a few things. Not going to lie, just going to say. But what did you make of Raw?
Yeah, I mean, I think going through the motions is the best word for Raw at the minute. But as John said, they are pushing these two angles. The only thing, and I've said this in the last two podcasts we've done, I kind of think they've taken the edge off the Roman Sammy one by just announcing straight away that Cody was going against Roman. Literally, I think on the same night that he won the Royal Rumble. I can't remember if it was that night or the next night. And I just think the positions of the promos, the Cody Sammy one was great, but I think that may have been better 2 weeks ago when they done the Cody Heyman one and switch them around, or to have Cody's and Heyman's after the Elimination Chamber when we actually know what's going to happen, rather than they kind of promoted it and then, Sammy's come along and done his bit. Yeah, other than that, other than Seth Rollins' shoes, or whatever you call them.
What was that?
What was that? Going through the motions, I think is the best way for the Raw this week. I think I would like to see what happens after the Chamber with guys like Bronson Reed, Montez Ford, Damian Priest. I think those are the three guys in the Chamber that I think the WWE are trying to, this is probably their test for those three now, because obviously Montez has been there or thereabouts for a little while. They've teased a little split with the Street Profits recently, and they know they're favouring Montez over Angelo. That's going to be a big test. Damian Priest has got money written all over him, putting in with Finn and Rhea, great. But he needs to, I'm not saying branch out from the Judgment Day, because I kind of like that, but it's his time. And Bronson Reed is just an absolute beast. And although the crowd reactions have been somewhat,
the crowd say otherwise, mate.
Yeah, I know, but I still think there's something there with Bronson as well.
Definitely. John, what are your thoughts ahead of Saturday's Elimination Chamber? A lot of fans seem to be mixed about it. They're like, it's just filling in the gaps. I mean, I'm quite excited about it. I think the men's chamber match looks good. The whole Sami Zayn fighting in Montreal is going to be really good. Kevin Owens is probably going to play a part of it. What are your thoughts as we head into the Elimination Chamber this Saturday?
Yeah, I think the whole show is built around Sami Zayn and what's going to happen there. So the chamber matches are usually fun. They usually deliver in some capacity, but for me, the intrigue is what happens with Sami Zayn. How does that next chapter unfold in this story? And you talk about great moments. There will no doubt be great moments made from his return to Montreal. And I just keep thinking in my head as I'm trying to put this match together in my head, what will that near fall look like where Sammy's got Roman for 2.99999 seconds? Just what a moment that's going to be. So I look forward to how they tell that story, and I think that will anchor the whole pay-per-view.
What does the future look like, John? If you're booking this, or if you're, got your booking head on right now, what does the future look like for the next, even up to Mania and post Mania for WWE? Because when they've had such a, like Adam stated on our last show, and like you stated at the start there, John, this storyline has been incredible now. They've built this for WWE. Haven't done this for a long time, where they've built a storyline for a number of years. This has been I'm with Adam. I don't know if you listen to our last show, Adam says this a lot. He's all in for the storytelling. I'm all in for this kind of storytelling. I think it's been tremendous. Where do they go post Mania?
I would imagine that Cody versus Roman is the path for WrestleMania. I wouldn't deviate from it. I think a lot of people, even those who are clamoring for Sami Zayn to be in that, to me, the payoff with Sami Zayn hasn't been with Roman Reigns. I think the immediate payoff is with him right now, but that has not been the end goal payoff with this. I think the story's truly layered where it's him and the Usos, and specifically Jey Uso, and that's where the true payoff comes, alongside him reuniting with the man who is his actual best friend, and Kevin Owens. So I think the story hits that fork in the road where you've got Sami Zayn going down that one path with the Usos and Kevin Owens, and you got Cody and Roman Reigns going down that other path.
Yeah, Adam, are you kind of the same thought? Like we touched on this a little bit on the last episode after you've seen from Raw. I'm with John. I think Zayn and Owens will be tag team champions. I think that's bound to happen at Mania, and then moving forward, Cody will be WWE champion.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet. I think that was the payoff once. After Survivor Series, you kind of guessed at some point that Kevin Owens was going to reunite with Sami after that. They say they're best friends, but they've been feuding for like 20 odd years. That's a great bit of long-term storytelling across a load of promotions, that one. But, I agree. I think they may, if they do, I can't know, are they doing WrestleMania Backlash this year after Mania?
God,
I don't know.
I hope not.
Because if they do, then it kind of, puts the rematches in place. I think I remember maybe a couple of months ago, they were talking like having the Usos versus the Paul brothers at WrestleMania, and so that changed. So thankfully, But yeah, I think that's the way it's going to go. Cody and Roman will feud for the title. Kevin and Sammy will win the tag titles and strip that reign, and then the bloodline kind of goes from winning everything to nothing. The only person left is what happens to Solo at that point.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him. John, what else is exciting you in wrestling at the minute? For our listeners that don't know, and you really should, John hosts a fantastic podcast with a certain Matt Hardy. It's a tremendous show. I promise you, go and check it out. It's really good. What's exciting you in wrestling at the minute, John? I know I've heard you on your podcast say, you're very big into the AEW side of things right now. They're kind of getting a bit of a bad rap from quite a few places right now. And I watch AEW. I still like it. I think the product was always maybe going to take a little dip. They couldn't ride that whole wave forever. WWE done it, WCW done it, TNA's always been crap. But they always ride these waves. Where are you with wrestling in general at the moment?
I don't think there's been a better time, quality of content wise, to be a fan of pro wrestling. I think there's a lot of high quality offerings right now across the board, whatever your palate desires, whether it's the sports entertainment-y style of professional wrestling, whether it's the in-ring ground and pound technical style of wrestling, whether it's more of a hard-hitting style, a strong style, if you will, or women's wrestling or whatever it may be. I think it's a great time to be a fan. And there are so many options where companies are crossing over as well. We have this awesome Impact versus New Japan show that's going to be coming up WrestleMania weekend. We know Mercedes Varnado is going to have the New Japan Strong debut coming up this week. I think it's a great time to be a wrestling fan. And if you restrict yourself to only watching one form, well, that's your prerogative and that's your choice. But right now, it's a good time, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I watch all wrestling. I mean, ask my wife. I probably watch too much, too much wrestling. But Adam, I know. Obviously, I get John's views on it as well. I know Tony Khan got a lot of stick this week. He done an interview discussing Vince McMahon trying to take sponsors off him and stuff. Kind of hark back to the old WCW days. The era that you and I grew up on, Adam. Yep. Like you say, we had Vince Russo on last week talking about that. And and it's a WWE still really doing these tricks where they're trying to get people not to go and work for AEW. And I saw the interview and I was thinking, man, I really hope this isn't true. But clearly is. Tony Khan, he knew what he was talking about, and I was like, man, surely this still isn't going on. But fair play, to AEW. They're trying to do different things with the New Japan thing, with the Alliance, really good what they're trying to do. But what did you make of the interview that was this week?
First of all, before we go into that, the last week, so not this week, because obviously Dynamite hasn't aired, hasn't been on yet. It's on tonight in the States. I actually preferred AEW over every wrestling promotion last week. And it's unusual I say that because I'm not necessarily a fan of the Elite and Kenny Omega, and they was in a match that I generally would class as trampoline. But again, it's someone's prerogative, as John said. But I actually enjoyed it. But I thought it was a very hard-hitting Impact with a lot of, the MJF, and I got to say this guy's name very loosely. Is it Takashita or something like that? Takashita or something like that. I have to be careful with that one over there. But yeah, it was a very hard-hitting match, and so was Bryan Danielson and Rush, depending on how you want to say it. But does it surprise me that WWE still didn't? No, it doesn't surprise me. I think there's other things that have come out that I think even before AEW started, they tried to, they offered big money to like Gallows and Anderson to stay, and then they released them. And so, no, it still doesn't surprise me that they do it.
No. John, do you think there's a genuine, could we ever see like an old school WCW, WWE with AEW? I'm with you, mate. I think wrestling's wrestling. If you can never have enough. You don't have to watch it all. Like you say, that's your prerogative. That's if you choose to watch something, or you might not. I can never watch enough. I'll watch Dynamite on a Thursday morning. I usually catch up on it. Rampage for me needs a lot of work. Needs a hell of a lot of work. That's a show that they could really, really push. If you look at the numbers that SmackDown does on a Friday, it doesn't help them that Rampage is taped. I think everything just gets leaked and everyone's like, well, I'm not going to bother watching that. But John, I'm with you. You can never have enough wrestling. But do we get too caught up in the whole AEW, WWE thing?
That would be Konosuke Takeshita.
Hey,
sorry.
There you go.
My bad.
I knew we'd get it.
Yeah.
No, listen, I think that's just semantics that fans get caught up in. Like, these wrestlers don't care. They don't. They have friends across different companies and promotions, and people generally like each other. So it's a manufactured war by fans at the end of the day. Are we ever going to see a WCW versus WWE kind of thing? I don't think so, just because WWE is just monumentally this juggernaut money wise. I mean, as far as the sale goes, I have my podcast with Eric Bischoff, Strictly Business, where we talk every week about it, where WWE could probably be selling for $7-8 billion soon if it does sell. So AEW's market value is not that, and that's fine. It's a 4-year-old company. That's natural. That's going to be the reality of it. So I think it's more than anything just a fan manufactured rivalry, and there are some legitimate things that happens between the higher ups, as Tony alluded to, but all things considered, I wouldn't look too far into that.
Yeah, definitely. Adam, we now go into SmackDown this week. Again, the Bloodline have been scheduled to appear. For me, at the minute, SmackDown seems to be the A show. I mean, I don't know what you think. I've spoke to a few wrestling fans this week who reached out. We kind of got into this debate. I remember back in the day where Monday Night Raw was Monday Night Raw. For me, SmackDown is the better show now. I'd say SmackDown, Raw and Dynamite are probably on the same scale for me. I'm with you. I really enjoyed Dynamite last week. Not too sure the referee might not want to pass MJF a blade so blatantly on live TV. They kind of let themselves down with that a little bit. But what are you looking forward to SmackDown this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've already mentioned that the Usos are at home on SmackDown, and I think that's to give the perception that they're not going to be in Canada, but they actually are. And I think that's going to play into Saturday at the Elimination Room. And by the way, John, we love these pay-per-views on a Saturday in England. See,
John, they can do. I love a Saturday pay-per-view. I can sit up and watch it live. Best thing wrestling ever done. I never want to see another Sunday pay. Well, apart from night 2 of Mania, we have to. I don't want to see a Sunday pay-per-view ever again.
Exactly. But yes, SmackDown's definitely number one for me. And then I, to be honest, I will go with Dynamite just because it's 2 hours. I find Raw
perfect time.
Yeah, I do find 3 hours of Raw quite difficult, and I know obviously sponsorship. We know they're getting a lot of money for that third hour, but it's difficult. As you already alluded to, Andy, we're quite a story. We like it from a storyline perspective as well as an in-ring perspective, and I just don't have the appetite for 3 hours of Raw just to sit through. I mean, like Miz TV and I like the Miz. Don't get me wrong. I think Miz is still very underutilized to this day, but it's just not 3 hours is just too much. They say you can never have too much of a good thing, but I think you can in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. John, before we wrap up with you, my friend, I know your time's precious. How did the love of wrestling start for you, my man? How did you get to come to the guy that we now hear podcasting, talking to Eric Bischoff, Matt Hardy? Where did it all start for you, my friend? We all have a story how we got into wrestling. How did yours begin?
Well, I've just always been a student of the game when it comes to storytelling. It's what I've done professionally for the past 10 plus years in television news and across the spectrum. And when I was a young kid, I was at a friend's house watching a pay-per-view called Bad Blood, and this big MFer with a mask on burst through a cage, and Vince McMahon said that's got to be Kane. And from that moment, I was just hooked, and it stuck with me throughout the years. And I started to learn the art more and work in independent wrestling and manage and gain an appreciation for how stories are told in the ring. And here we are today. I'm very blessed that I get to do what I do, and grateful for every day that I get to talk with fine, kind sirs like yourself and everyone around the industry. It's a great community. It can be a little damning sometimes, but I really have the best seat in the house when I get to talk to these great figures of the business who have such fantastic stories to share, and I get to ask those questions. So I don't take that for granted.
What's your favorite wrestling story that you can tell us on air that you've been told?
Favorite story that I've been told?
You must, because the podcast that you do. I've heard some absolute. When Bishop starts going off, I love when he goes and you just you let him go. I'm like, this is going to be classic. Some of the things he comes out with, and Matt Hardy. I mean, some you like you say, you are in a blessed position. Yeah. Is there one that stands out for you? To think, man, they really pulled the curtain back there.
I hear so many all the time. I mean, I encourage anyone to go into the archives, The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, or some of the other shows I've hosted. But if I had to pick one story that I always find entertaining, back when the Hardy Boys used to run with Michael Hayes, and Michael Hayes and the Freebirds were notorious ribbers. So they were, and when I say they, I mean the Hardys and Michael Hayes were at a rest stop driving on the highway. And I think this is from episode 3 or episode 4 of The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. We talked about this a long time ago. They went to pull over and go to the bathroom. And I guess Jeff went into a stall. Michael Hayes goes into the urinal directly next to the stall, and Matt is in the urinal next to Michael Hayes. And Michael is like, "Hey, watch this." And he grabs his junk and he like squeezes tight on it, and he points it up, and he, for all intents and purposes, he shoots his piss over the stall onto Jeff. And Jeff is getting rained on with Michael Hayes' urine. And apparently that was an old school rib that the Freebirds used to do together, because that was the Wild West days of wrestling. And I think that gives you some good insight into Michael Hayes, the dynamic there.
What a great story. What
Yeah.
a great story.
You can hear that whole story of The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. That's our Michael Hayes episode.
That's it. Honestly, go and check out the John podcast with Matt Hardy. It's a great podcast. John, just finishing up, last one from us, my friend. Is there anything you miss from wrestling that was involved in wrestling when you first started watching that's not really involved now? Mine's always been the opening of Raw with the signs. I miss that, man. Now it's just, don't get me wrong, we all use our cell phones, our mobile phones. I miss Raw when the camera panned round. Sign, not a camera phone in sight. I miss that surprise. You don't really get the element of surprise. Probably the last biggest one was the Hardy Boys coming back at WrestleMania. No one had a clue. That music hit, and you could see on the faces of everyone in that stadium that nobody knew. For me, it's the element of surprise seems to have gone out from wrestling. What's the one thing that you miss?
I don't know. I guess when you talk about like the late 90s era of wrestling, one of the things that made it so magical was that it was water cooler talk the next day. Everyone and their mother watched pro wrestling. Pro wrestling here in the States was outdrawing Monday Night Football, which is an institution in the US. And the thought of that happening today is just insane. But it was happening back then. So I think that sense of community where everyone had an idea of what was going on, maybe I missed that, but it's still a super passionate group of fans that care about pro wrestling, and I relish the opportunity to talk wrestling with individuals who invest their time in it.
Yeah, most definitely. John, before we let you go, my friend, tell our listeners where they can find you and what you're up to these days.
I'm the host of The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, which drops every single Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. I host Strictly Business with Eric Bischoff, wherever you get your podcasts. And I have a wrestling Patreon, which you get a lot of really cool bonus content from me on, and you can interact with me on a weekly basis, sometimes a daily basis, where we do tape studies of wrestling and Ask Albas and all this good stuff. That's wrestlingaccordingtoalba.com. And I'm also streaming. I'm one of the hosts on Fight TV, hosting content there. So a whole bunch of places, at Jon Alba on Twitter for as long as Twitter still exists. Who's to say? And yeah,
John, that could be gone very soon. John, we always end the episode. We've done it with Vince last week. What's your unpopular wrestling opinion?
Well, Vince Russo has a lot of very unpopular wrestling.
He couldn't. He was stumped. We stumped him.
We stumped him. His answer was that wrestling today sucks. That was his answer.
Vince Russo could have just spoken, and all of a sudden, that's an unpopular wrestling.
He's done that today. I think. Is he not upset the wrestling community today with the hates the fact that everyone sings Seth Rollins' theme song?
Oh, really? I haven't seen all of that today. What's your unpopular wrestling opinion? Yeah, everyone's always got one.
I think I'm a pretty regimented guy. Man, unpopular wrestling opinion.
We might have stumped 2 guests in a week here, Adam.
Get one more, we get the hat trick.
Yeah, I know, right?
It is my belief that pro wrestling can be anything, as long as it makes sense and there's story behind it, pro wrestling can be anything. I do a podcast with the guy that created the Broken Universe. There's, you mentioned Adam, you mentioned you said the trampoline stuff. I think that can be pro wrestling too. I think Bryan Danielson versus Roosh can be pro wrestling. I think there's a lot of things that can be pro wrestling. All it takes is just commitment to it making sense and putting thought and care behind it. And if you do that, then it can be pro wrestling.
John, great way to end our time with you, my friend. Thank you so much for your time, man. I know you're an extremely, extremely busy man. We hope to get you on back down the line, my friend. But generally, I love listening to your podcast. I think it's tremendous. The fact that I've got to spend 20 minutes with you is really cool for us over here in the UK, my friend. So thank you so much for your time, brother.
I appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much for the support, and thanks for having me.
No worries, my man. Good luck down the road, brother.
Take care, guys.
And you, my friend. Adam, super cool to chat to John on a podcast. He generally does great. His podcasts are really good, my man. But let's catch up on a little bit more wrestling this week, mate, before we wrap up. I mean, the women's division didn't really get much better this week on Raw. I'm not gonna lie, like John says, that was maybe it was the main event. I thought Raw went off the air, and I was kind of looking around thinking, fucking hell, is that it? Is that the end to 3 hours of TV? That's how they end it. Do you know what? I'd rather they maybe have ended it with the whole Brock Lesnar segment and the contract. And even that was a bit, I was struggling to fit in what I would have put as the main event, because I was like, oh, and then I was like, well, Beck, no, they're not in the Elimination Chamber now. I was like, well, this has been a complete fucking waste of time. Bianca Belair she won, and I was like, oh. Well, it's 3 hours of my life that I'm never really going to get back, apart from laughing my ass off at Seth Rollins' shoes / whatever the hell he was wearing. I like the whole stuff with Edge and, what they done. But I just thought the end of Raw, I thought it just limped over the line. And that's not what I keep getting at. I never used to say that about Monday. Like John said, wrestling used to be where you had to tune in the following week. After Monday, I was like, oh. Okay, that's kind of, I suppose you kind of get it because it's just filler for Saturday. And Raw next week will all be like, oh my God, this happened at the Elimination Chamber, and hopefully, but what did you make of it, mate?
Yeah, I often use the term arse backwards. I think that's about the best way to put it. I mean, I could have done Cody and Sammy at the end. You could have done Brock, and I thought that potentially they were going to do something with Trish coming out and maybe Lita coming out, and then making that official for Elimination Chamber, because I thought that's what they were going to do. Maybe they've held off for Mania. I don't know. It was just you kind of just sat there and was like, okay, well, what's next? And then it just faded off, and you were just kind of like, oh, that's the end of Raw. You just kind of arse backwards is the best way I could have put that.
Obviously, I spoke to John about it. Well, just quickly with me and you. What are you expecting this Saturday for the Elimination Chamber? Are you expecting? Is there going to be any shocks? Is the US title changing hands? Roman Reigns is not in a billion years losing to Sami Zayn. Something's going to happen. Kevin Owens is going to cost him. Something crazy, stupid is going to happen. It will probably end up a no DQ match somehow. I don't know how. Something's going to happen with the Usos. Are the Usos even allowed in Canada? There's so much that could go on this week. Is anything going to blow your mind this weekend?
No, I don't think anyone's going to blow my mind this weekend. I think definitely the Usos are definitely in Canada. That's already kind of been, and I'm not saying necessarily announced by WWE, but it's been announced by reputable people that they're going to be there. They'll probably be off SmackDown just to play up the whole them not being there. We know the Sammy and Jay done the fist bump last week, but I just think that it's going to end up with Jay costing Sammy match, because he was the one initially that was against him, and now all of a sudden I think the way they've planned it is they try to get Jay in with Sammy to sort of tease it, and then bang, Jay ends up doing it, and then perhaps right at the end is the reunite of Kevin and Sammy. Perhaps maybe they'll save that for a later date. I don't know. I think Austin Theory will probably retain just because of Cena coming back for Austin Theory at Mania. Seth Rollins, I believe, is against Logan Paul. Now, before you shake your head and start thinking, you know what? for me, that has the potential to be a show stealer at Mania, because I don't like Logan Paul, I don't like Jake Paul, but he takes wrestling seriously and he can go in the ring. So put him in there with fine. I think Seth deserves. That could well steal either night one or night two. So I was not on the line, is it? Charlotte's not.
Not at the
We're
chamber.
aware.
No, not at the chamber.
No,
mate,
so
no.
that's kind of out of the door. Then it's the winner versus the winner of the women's will take on Bianca, right?
That's it, mate.
So I'm thinking Oscar for that. There's just no pull with anybody else. I can't see. As you say, the women's division's been so bad that it's just like there's no standout.
Ronda Rousey's back now. I suppose they could get her in. Obviously, she's going to be in the mix. She's not going to be some sort of mid card match at WrestleMania. Ronda Rousey's going to be in a main event somewhere. I think.
Yeah, I think this is why I thought Trish was going to come out on Raw, because they were going to do Damage Control versus Becky, Trish, and Lita at Elimination Chamber. They still might. It may just happen on the Saturday there and then as a surprise.
They might do it at Mania.
No, I think at Mania it's Ronda.
What's Becky doing at Mania?
This is the thing.
Is she going to be in some sort of legend? Becky and Lita versus another legend and a current wrestler?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know what Becky will do. Yeah, those are the sorts of questions that I suppose will be going through Raw as we go on. I think potentially if Lita and Trish are hanging, then maybe one Becky, and because I think didn't Trish at SummerSlam a few years ago? I think something along those lines. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing with the women's division at the minute. It's just been so drab. You might as well bring Jade Cargill in for.
I swear to God, if she's on my TV, no, mate, honestly, I'd rather stick my head in the oven.
But
God damn, it's like the what's his name from NXT now? The NXT champion got booed out of the building last night.
Braun Breaker. Yeah,
he got booed out of the building.
And I think again, if you go back to what I was saying, I think maybe in a Russo or maybe the podcast before, when you throw someone down your throat, there's that resentment. It happened with Cena. It happened with Hogan.
Happens with
it's what more can they do? And I think also there's a point where they've got to start calling these guys up, because you can't keep.
You can damage them too much in NXT though, because when you call them up, if they're getting booed the shit out of now, what the hell's going to happen? You know, it's like when they get called up to the main roster, they'll probably put them in some stupid fucking War Raiders gimmick, Viking suits, whatever the hell they've been doing, and they'll just ruin them. And, Breaker's getting, honestly, mate, I saw that main event. I watched it about an hour ago, actually. I quickly dipped into it and I was like, my God, they hate him. And sometimes that can be a good thing in wrestling. Like Rock always said, if you're getting booed, you're doing something right. This one, I didn't get the feeling that this was you're getting booed, you're doing something right kind of moment. You're getting booed because they fucking hate you and they're bored. A couple of people on Twitter just before I jumped on this podcast were like, he offers nothing. He's just a typical WWE, big muscles, awful on the mic, can't wrestle. Typical Vince McMahon back in the day, likes the big dudes, put the belt on him and hope for the best. Well, you've hoped for the best now. He's been champion for God knows how long.
Yeah, give or take. I think he's lost it once or twice, hasn't he? But he's won it straight back near enough to.
Yeah, they pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they haven't really deviated. NXT doesn't seem to have a vision right now. Hence why the New Day are back and they were champs, and hence why you see Charlotte Flair pop up every now and then. They're kind of like, we kind of need to keep NXT relevant. Where back in the day, NXT was the one that I was like, I'm watching NXT.
Yeah, is it?
Forget Raw and SmackDown. I'm watching NXT, and now that seems to have just gone. NXT's on the same. It's on the same level as Rampage for me.
Yeah, I mean, I said it. It's a tough watch. There's a couple of notables like Carmella Hayes. Sorry, that's the one that I like her. But yeah, you could. Yeah, I mean, say call up. I mean, who can you call up at the moment from NXT? I mean, perhaps as I think I said this again a couple of weeks ago, perhaps some of the women just to freshen up the main roster a little bit. Because the guys, as you say, Braun Breaker, what are you going to do when he comes up? Like, I mean, he's got as the people say, he's got the look he could challenge for the titles if believability would put him in there as a but I don't know. I worry now, and not because it's not Vince in charge, even with Hunter in charge, because he's brought guys back and has done absolutely nothing with the guys he's brought back.
Jinder Mahal's there now. What's his name? Who was the guy that got the big push on Raw? There, Indian guy with the
Veer
Indian.
Mahan.
That meant to be like every week though. How long was that promo, by the way, to get him onto Raw? And then they finally get him on there, and you're like, this dude sucks.
Yeah.
And I knew straight away. I didn't think you'd envision him doing like he's obviously doing the tag team work now back in NXT.
Yeah.
He'll be on the independents within 6 months. 7 months.
They'll
He'll
have
be,
to go through
Impact. Maybe. Hey, that's the problem now. Maybe everyone goes, "Oh, he's going to AEW." I can see him bypassing that, mate. I can see him being on Impact. Bully Ray's back on there, by the way,
and in WA.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's lots of things. Matt Cardone due to be coming back to WWE. John told me before we started recording. Everyone go and check out Jon Alba's latest podcast. He interviewed Matt today, and he asked him, "Are you coming back to WWE?" So make sure you go and check out all the links that John put on there. But Adam, we have the Elimination Chamber this Saturday, my friend. You and I will no doubt be watching that. I might actually get to stay up and watch that one live. I'm away this weekend. I might try and do it. It'll be on my phone, or it'll be Sunday morning, mate. And then you and I will try and get into it either Sunday night or next Monday, mate. But I'm on the fence. I don't know if it's going to be great. I don't know if it's going to be good. I always worry about these pay-per-views that are stuck in between WrestleMania.
Yeah. I'm
like you said earlier. I'm like this pay-per-view, how you are with WrestleMania Backlash. Yeah. I'm kind of okay. It could be good. It could be the whole Reigns, Rollins, the US title thing, and I think them guys alone, Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley, couldn't care less.
It depends with Lesnar and
where they're going with that. And we're really running out of time here. What's Lesnar doing at WrestleMania? I swear to God, if he fights Bobby Lashley again, that's the time I'm going to get up. Probably make a drink while that match is on because I couldn't care less.
Lesnar, Lashley, and I'll be brief because of time. I always said Lesnar and Lashley, if you give the time and just let them have let them do the match, it will work. But when you're doing what's called a typical Brock Lesnar match, it's 5 minutes of throwing around. It's not going to work. The first two, they tried to go a bit technical. I think at the Crown Jewel when they messed up the finish, where I think he was going to do that off the post, and he done. I call it the Bret Hart finish. I remember it from Roddy Piper at WrestleMania when he had him in a sleeper roll and he put through. But Lesnar at Mania, I'm still praying that he's going for Gunther. I would love.
Dude, they've got to, man.
I would.
They've got, mate. They've dropped the ball if they don't. After the Rumble, when they faced off, like you said on that episode after the Rumble, when they faced off, you only had to listen to the people. WWE, sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. Listen to the.
At Mania, I would love Fatal 4-Way. Drew Sheamus, Gunther, Brock Lesnar. I take my money. I will just sit there and happily, because that match will have to go long. Not to say have to go long, but it would need to be a longer Brock Lesnar match than what we've had for the last 3 or 4 years. Give them 25 minutes of fun. Just let them kick the shit out of each other. What Gunther's like with his chops. So that funny meme that I sent you earlier on. But
it's very funny actually. Great stuff. Mate, it worked because I really laughed and I was like, "You won't get
it." Just literally let them go. Fatal 4-Way. Let them brutalize each other. And if Gunther loses, as long as it's to Sheamus, who's the one title that he hasn't won, then fine. Or Gunther keep it. Because Drew and Brock don't need it, but Sheamus or Gunther does.
Yeah, no, very well put, and a great way to end the show. And then we'll be back with our Elimination Chamber review Sunday or Monday. We'll figure it out. But we have got some great guests lined up, and trust me, when there probably isn't a person in the wrestling world that me and Adam haven't tried to email over the last week. We are trying to bring on some great guests for you guys on this show. We really appreciate Adam. The feedback from the Vince Russo interview was incredible.
Yes, it was.
Big thanks to everyone that just sent us messages saying how much they love the show. I know it's over on the Sports Capital. You can go and check out the show on.
Just quickly on that one, Andy. In regards to the Sports Capital, I'm sitting down with the Sports Capital on Friday to talk to UK wrestler Corey McRae. So
nice.
That's a bit more bigging up the UK wrestling scene. So I'll put that on it.
You can never have enough UK wrestling, mate. I mean, that's going to be, we're going to call, I think the guys over at the Sports Capital hitting the Turnbuckle Extra.
I know, we're getting extra shows already. What's going on?
We're getting extra. Start a Patreon soon, mate. Well, I'll buy that yacht. Me and you'll be buying them yachts sooner or later, mate. But no, honestly, go and check Adam out. He will be He'll be on the Sports Capital on Friday. Me and Adam will be back. We're probably going to say Sunday or Monday, depending on when either of us watch the pay-per-view. Check us out on Twitter. We are trying to build that following at HTT Buckle. You can find us. Go and check out the Sports Capital. All the links will be in our bio. This will be uploaded on via the Sports Capital's YouTube. Audio, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Pod, Google Pod, wherever you get a podcast, you can find myself and Adam's dulcet tones. But Adam, let's do it again at the weekend, brother, and enjoy the elimination table, and good luck tomorrow, and good luck on the Sports Capital.
You too. Thank you. See you later. See you later, guys.
Yeah, bro.
Bye-bye.
You think you've got my number?